the late 1800s was becoming a new era for boxers. Not too long before, John L. Sullivan would become the heavyweight champion of the world when he defeated Jake Kilrain. And what it meant for black fighters is that they would never get a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world. John L. Sullivan made it very clear that he would never give a black fighter a shot at the title. And this included George Godfrey. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, and I would like to discuss this matter further with you right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Phoebe Smith Williams was born January 25th, 1897 in Mobile, Alabama. He died August 13th, 1947 in Los Angeles, California. He stood 6'1" to 6'3" inches. He weighed 220 to 260 pounds, and he was managed by Jim Doghart. Now, he was trained by the legendary Jack Blackburn. George Godfrey was an original Big George Foreman of his day. George Godfrey won the IBU Heavyweight Championship of the world, as well as the Colored Heavyweight Championship of the world. Now, what was amazing about George Godfrey's career? In 1926, the holder of the Colored Heavyweight Championship belt was Harry Wills. And Harry Wills would face Jack Sharkey. And because of what was claimed to be excessive holding, Harry Wills was disqualified, and he would lose his Colored Heavyweight Championship belt. So George Godfrey would be in the ring with Larry Gans. He would become the Colored Heavyweight Champion of the world. Jack Dempsey needed to make a comeback after 2.5-year hiatus. And instead of allowing Harry Wills an opportunity at a shot of his title, he had Harry Wills face Jack Sharkey. And this allowed him to slide back into the ring, only this time offering his heavyweight championship shot to Gene Tunney. That was a cherry pick that went bad. Now, George Godfrey was in a ring with a lot of outstanding fighters. And what I want to do in this video is break down his opponents' profiles and their careers. Starting with James Tut Jackson. He was born September 21st, 1900, and he died July 17th, 1960. He's just 6'1.5" inches, and he weighed 185 to 198 pounds. Now, he fought fighters such as Denver Jack Geyer, Sam Langford, Roughhouse Ware, Harry Wills, Jeff Smith, phenomenal fighter he was, Jamaica Kid, Tiger Flowers, Big Bill Tate, Kid Norfolk, Battling Siki. Phenomenal. That was the career of Tut Jackson. George Godfrey would also be in the ring with Big Bill Tate. He fought out of Chicago, Illinois, and stood 6'6" inches and weighed 220 to 243 pounds. Now, he fought Sam Langford an astonishing 12 times. He was in the ring with Battling Jim Johnson, Joe Jeanette, John Lester Johnson, Kid Norfolk, Harry Wills, Sam Langford, Ed Gunboat Smith. Phenomenal career Big Bill Tate would have. Godfrey would also face Jack Thompson. He fought out of Denver, Colorado, 6 foot, 220 pounds. He went down as low as 207 pounds. And he was in the ring with Jeff Clark, Roughhouse Ware, Big Bill Tate, Cleve Hawkins, Joe Jeanette, Alfred Soldier Jones, George Godfrey himself, and Clem Johnson. Phenomenal. Godfrey was in the ring with Fred Fulton, who was also in the ring with Larry Gans. He was born December 12th, 1901, Ontario, Canada. Now, he fought fighters such as George Godfrey himself, Primo Carnera, Max Smelling. Phenomenal. Jack London, Charlie Ballinger, Horace Soldier Jones. Godfrey would also be in the ring with Neil Gillespie. He was born July 26, 1908, Los Angeles, California. Stood 5 foot 10 and a half inches, 187 to 198 pounds. And he was in the ring with Cecil Seal Harris, John Lester Johnson, Long Tom Hawkins, Jack Thompson, Ed Bearcat Wright, Gil Godfrey, Dynamite Jackson, Two-Ton Tony Colento, and Primo Carnero. Godfrey was in the ring with Paulino Escandon. Paulino Escandon was a fighter that Max Schmeling would have the famous quote of saying, "I see something," because Escandon was in the ring with the famous brown bomber, Joe Louis. And Joe Louis would drop his jab every time he would hit Paulino Escandon. So that's his claim to fame. I'm going to do my best to show you a lot of opponents that I talked about today. But Godfrey was also in the ring with Big Bill Hartwell, Jack Gross. He fought Cecil Seal Harris. He was born January 20th, 1906, Union Spring, Alabama. He stood 6 foot 3 and a half inches and he weighed 220 to 245 pounds. He fought fighters such as Walter Cobb, Neil Gillespie, Long Tom Hawkins, Pete Wiscott, Chuck Wiggins, Roy Ace Clark, Larry Gans, Primo Carnero, Long Tom Hawkins, Tiger Jack Fox, Max Baer, King Levinsky, fought him 4 rounds, Ed Bearcat Wright, and George Godfrey himself. Would also be in the ring. December 20th, 1928. He claimed the colored heavyweight championship over Larry Gans. He fought Tiger Jack Fox. He was born April 2nd, 1907. Indianapolis, Indiana. He died April 6, 1954 in Washington, D.C. Now, he stood 5 foot 11 and a half inches and weighed 172 to 200 pounds. He had a fighting career record of 154 wins, 22 losses. He was stopped 12 times and had 98 knockouts. And he would face Jersey Joe Walcott, Bob Olin, Maxie Rosenblum, Al Gaynor, Steve Dorr, Bill Peterson, Frank Rousey, Alvin Babe Hunt. He would also be in the ring with Jack Trammell, phenomenal African-American fighter, Larry Johnson. They called him Larry One Punch Johnson. Astonishing, George Godfrey was in the ring with Long Tom Hawkins. He would face Tom Caller. He was from Cumber Lake Giant, and that's what they called him, the Cumber Lake Giant. He was born March 28th, 1892 in England. He died February 20th, 1951 in England. He stood 6 foot 1 and a half inches and he weighed 205 pounds to 221 pounds. And he was in the ring with Denver Ed Martin. Denver Ed Martin would lose his colored heavyweight championship belt 1903 to the Galveston Giant, Jack Johnson. But Tom Carter would also be in the ring with George One Round Davis, Al Reach, William Iron Hogue, Andre Anderson, Sailor Jack Carroll, Ben Taylor, Joe Bonds. Phenomenal. George Godfrey would face Fred Fulton. He was known as the original White Hope. He was born April 19, 1891, in Blue Rapids, Kansas. Now, he would die July 7th, 1973 in Parks Rapids, Michigan. He stood 6 foot 4 and a half inches and he weighed 207 to 225 pounds. And he was in the ring with Ed Gunbo Smith, Carl Morris, Dan Porky Flynn, Arthur Perky, Al Kaufman, Bob Deserve, Homer Smith, Willie Meade, Jack Thompson, John Lester Johnson. Phenomenal. George Godfrey was in the ring with Jack Sharkey, the Boston Gob. He was born October 26, 1902. And he died, unfortunately for him, August 17, 1994. I met him. He died in Beverly, Massachusetts. He stood 6 foot and he weighed 181 to 205 pounds. He had a fighting career record of 37-13-3 with 13 knockouts. And he was in the ring with Homer Smith, Jim Maloney, Emilio King Solomon, Harry Wills, George Godfrey, Mike McTeague, Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, Max Schmeling, Mickey Walker, Primo Carnera, fought him twice, Ed Unknown Winston. And what's incredible about the Mickey Walker fight, he fought Mickey Walker to a 12-round draw. And just 2 weeks later, Jack Sharkey would become the heavyweight champion of the world. Phenomenal. But he would also face Floyd Johnson. Godfrey would be in the ring with Ed Bearcat White. And he would face Tommy Loughran, W.L. Young Stribling. He was born December 18th, 1897 in Galveston, Texas, the hometown of Jack Johnson. He fought out of Nebraska, and he died July 6, 1975, San Antonio, Texas. He stood 6 foot 1 inch and weighed 205 to 230 pounds. And he was in the ring with Sam Langford, Max Baer, Jack Thompson, Dan Porky Flynn, James Tuck Johnson, Cecil Seal Harris, Roy Ace Clark, Bill Hartwell, Jack Johnson. Godfrey was in the ring with Clem Johnson. He was born 1894, West British, New Orleans. He was basically raised, and he fought out of New Orleans. And I'm stumbling over this because I can remember him fighting a lot in Guyana. But he came over to New Orleans. So in my mind, I'm trying to see where he actually originally fought out of. And it seems like it might have been more New Orleans, because I look at his career and the amount of opponents he fought. He fought out of New Orleans, but he had a great deal of success in Guyana as well. And he would fight Black Gunboat Smith, Harry Wills, Tiger Flowers, and Tuck Jackson, as well as Sam Langford. He would face Roughhouse Ware. His manager was Leo Penn Flynn. Last fight I want to get into is Roughhouse Ware. He was an opponent of George Godfrey, and he fought fighters as Jeff Clark. He would lose to Jeff Clark, Kid Norford, Sam Langford, Young Jack Johnson, John Lester Johnson, Big Bill Tate. Phenomenal. I want to go through his career with you by showing the opponents that I just named, as many of them as I can. The original White Hope, Carl Morris. He was also in the ring with Jack Johnson, Jess Willard, just to name a few. Carl Morris, the original White Hope. Godfrey was in the ring with Primo Carnera. Primo Carnera would become heavyweight champion when he would knock out Jack Sharkey in the 6th round. He would have a phenomenal fight career with hand-picked opponents. Joe Louis would knock him out in the 6 rounds. He would face Max Baer, and he would go down himself 11 times. In the 11th round, he was stopped. He was ran by the mob, brought over to make sure he can fill the pockets of those who had the best interests at heart. Primo Carnera was another White Hope for the establishment. George Godfrey was in the ring with the legendary Sam Langford. Sam Langford, I have #1, greatest fighter of all times. Because of his accomplishments, because the time in which he came, how he handled it, the opponents he fought, how often he fought them, the fighters that he defeated, Hall of Famers. Incredible. Started out actually as a featherweight. Challenged Joe Gans as a lightweight for his title. Challenged Joe Walcott for his welterweight championship. He was in a ring with Harry Greb. He was in a ring with Stanley Ketchel. He was in a ring with the light heavyweight champion, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. Challenged Jack Johnson in 1906 for the colored heavyweight championship. He fought Joe Jeanette. He fought Harry Wells. He fought them all. Unbelievable. He had the IBU Heavyweight Championship, the Colored Heavyweight Championship, the Middleweight Colored Championship. He had the Mexican Championship, the Australian Heavyweight Championship. Incredible fighter was Sam Langford. Big Fred Fulton, the original White Hope. Now the thing with Fred Fulton, he fought the majority of the White Hopes, which was Carl Morris and Dan Porky Flynn and Arthur Perkley, Al Kaufman, Bob Dezers, Homer Smith. I mean, Willie Mean. Willie Mean was in the ring with Jack Dempsey, 1920. Fred Fulton was another opponent of George Godfrey's. George Godfrey was in the ring with Jack Sharkey. Jack Sharkey was known as the Boston Gob. Now, he was a pretty good fighter, Jack Sharkey. Very active. Now, the thing with Jack Sharkey, I told you before, was him and Harry Wells. And that was the situation where Harry Wells would lose his colored heavyweight championship belt. More of a technicality than anything else. Because they would call it a 12-round disqualification, stating that Harry Wells was excessively holding Jack Sharkey. Harry Wells was a well-schooled fighter. Another black fighter that didn't get a fair opportunity to fight for the heavyweight championship belt. He was strung along by Kid Blackie, the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey. But Jack Sharkey would be in the ring himself with the legendary Tommy Loughran, one of my favorite light heavyweight champions of all times. Phenomenal fighter he was. But even he got multiple shots at the heavyweight championship belt. He was a light heavyweight champion himself. But Tommy Loughran and Jack Sharkey would begin the tournament of getting the belt that was relinquished from Gene Tunney in 1928. Gene Tunney had faced New Zealand's Tom Heaney. That would be his last title defense. And that belt would be in the air. And Tommy Loughran and Jack Sharkey would start the tournament off and fight for that belt. Tut Jackson. Another opponent of George Godfrey. Now, Cecil Harris is the last opponent that I want to get into because I actually like Cecil Harris. His name was Cecil Seal Harris. He was born January 20th, 1906 in Union Spring, Alabama. He stood 6'3.5" and he weighed 220 pounds, up to 245 pounds. He fought fighters such as Neil Gillespie, Long Tom Hawkins. Now, Long Tom Hawkins was one of those guys that they would stick in there every once in a while to destroy the blueprint. He was somewhat of a spoiler. Harris would also be in there with Chuck Wiggins, Primo Carnera, Long Tom Hawkins, Tiger Jack Fox, Max Baer, just trying to think of these guys, King Levinsky, Ed Bearcat Wright, and of course George Godfrey himself. But Cecil Harris was also in that mix with Al Gaynor, as well as George Godfrey for the colored heavyweight championship belt. Cecil Harris had that belt for a few days. Salute to Cecil Harris. Splendid guy. I actually like Cecil Harris. He did a lot of exhibitions with Joe Louis in the time of the war. So I just wanted to give you an idea of George Godfrey. His name was Phoebe Smith Williams. Salute to my subscribers. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. I think my battery's running out, so I'm going to end this video. But thanks for hanging in there with me, examining these outstanding fighters. Salute.